How can a nonprofit assist your legacy planning, bridging the present to the future? I'd like to welcome Kristen LeFer to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely morning. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you. Thank you, Angelina. I'm excited to be here.
It's my pleasure to host you, and I believe you're joining from Colorado in the United States of America.
Sunny, hot Denver right now, yes.
Yeah, good old summertime. So
Yep.
let's jump into an icebreaker, either professionally or personally, about yourself. And then what are some of the problems that you see or the voids when it comes to one, designing their legacy and leaving out this part that is important? So let's start with an icebreaker.
Yeah, well, when I was 8 years old, my mom had taken my sister to the doctor, and I was out playing with my friends, and she called me in and just gave me some news that I did not know would have an impact on my life. But she let me know that even though my sister appeared to be developing normally, the reason she wasn't developing language skills at almost 4 is that she was developmentally disabled, what we called back in the 70s mentally retarded, and those terms evolve. But what hasn't evolved is my sister being the most wonderful human I've ever met. She's very present, very emotionally aware, but still at 50 or so nonverbal. So I grew up around all these wonderful organizations, and especially Special Olympics had a big impact on me. And so we would take my sister to track. She was a track star, and we would watch her from the stands, and of course, the stands are always by the finish line. I have a lot of pictures of my sister in second place on the podium because she would always see her fans in the stands as she was getting close to the finish line, veer off and run over to high five them, and everyone would yell to get back on the track. But she is just full of life like that. And so I grew up with just belief that people help each other, and that there were all these wonderful people that come around and make life better for people who are disadvantaged or whatever, make the society just work and sing. And fast forward, 20 years later, I went to start a nonprofit, and I became kind of morally outraged at how difficult it was. And I realized that outrage was born from realizing that people that want to do a good thing, leave behind a legacy, or help kids like my sister or what have you, run into myriad obstacles getting a nonprofit going, and that it shouldn't be that way. So I decided to do something about it, and here I am.
Yeah, what's so interesting about what you just shared is that people want to do good, but then how do you get from point A to point B without running into, like what you said, 5 or 15 different roadblocks where you just throw your hands up at some point and think to yourself, well, if it's this hard to do good, then am I going to want to do good, or am I just going to give up? Because if it feels like
Absolutely.
a maze or a labyrinth, people sometimes just give up. Okay, so is that what then inspired you to start the Instant Nonprofit?
It was. I kind of like many problems that we end up solving in life, and maybe there's a background a little bit with you with the kind of work that you've done, but we end up getting activated later. And what happened was I started a nonprofit with a few friends of mine, and I called the IRS, and I could almost hear the chuckle in the back room when they told me it would be up to a year to be approved. And I had started a business before, and I knew it wasn't that difficult. And so what I did was I just started calling extensions into the IRS to curate a process, find out why this was so outrageously difficult. And I knew if I just changed the last couple of numbers on my agent's extension, and I knew that, they were never there, so I knew I'd get someone in the building. I started curating this list of why these things take so long, what stops an application, what causes delays, and what would make that bureaucrat's day on the other end to approve this thing and get it through quickly. And I turned that into what I called a love letter to a bureaucrat. And I submitted my application, and lo and behold, I got an approval within about 40 days. So I had cut, 9/10 or so off of the process. And I ended up doing it for someone else in town. They heard that I could do this, and I realized I could probably help a lot of people like this. And we all have these entry points into something that we hadn't discovered before, that's something that's brand new for us. And over the years, I've learned how many different advantages and different opportunities there are through starting a nonprofit, and I've helped 5,000 people, other people almost, do that at this point.
Yeah, one of the things in the research for today's conversation that I discovered is that about 4.7 trillion is available for nonprofits. So this is a really big deal. Obviously, I'm aware that nonprofits exist, but that's a huge chunk of change that is on the sidelines. When I had worked in commercial real estate before, there was an expression that there's always more money than there are deals. And I feel the same way regarding philanthropy, that there are so many people that want to see the world a better place, but where are the people who are willing to do the work to manifest and make that happen?
That's a great observation. And having been on the startup side of things, this company is a corporation. We have a foundation, but there is a lot of money looking to do good. And even if it's found a home, it's always looking to be more efficient. How can I apply this capital more efficiently than I currently am? And you see disruption with things like Uber disrupting the taxi industry. And there are all kinds of amazing things going on in the nonprofit sector as well, bringing greater innovation, greater information technology, helping more people for less, et cetera. And yeah, there's over $4 trillion under management. And just individuals alone give hundreds of billions of dollars a year, so outside of government. But what's amazing is that it doesn't matter what the administration is, the majority of government business is also done through nonprofits. And when you put those two piles of capital together, it's astounding. It's in the trillions, and there's so much opportunity for people to tap into that and leverage that. So even if people are putting their own capital in, maybe starting a family foundation to leave behind their values and their legacies, like the Rockefellers and the Carnegies have done, you can invite others to participate in your vision and make that an even bigger impact. But what's really cool to me about all of this is that people are trying to find ways to create an identity, right? We don't, young people especially, don't associate as much with their alma mater or maybe their family of origin and some of these things, right? The institutions of marriage, government, politics, etc. These things are not trusted as much as they used to be and not as identified with. And so we get to create our own meaning in life now, and we can do that through a nonprofit and involve our children and leave our values, behind us, but also have a great way to connect with family and connect with friends and enroll people in something that's bigger than ourselves. And that indeed leads to longer and healthier life itself.
Yeah, how cool. It's very, very cool. So let me ask you something before we go back to where Generation Z is, as well as some of the other generations that are finding meaning, like you had said, through nonprofit work in addition to the regular job, and where the economy is today, whether that's the gig economy, et cetera. Let me just take it back to the basics for a moment. How do you see nonprofit formation as a powerful vehicle for designing a meaningful legacy? Like, why nonprofits? Because I think I shared with you about 80% of my listeners are male, and they're also under age 40. So I don't want to just assume that a listener is going to know that a nonprofit is a way to go. So why? Why a nonprofit?
Well, what I'm finding is that younger people now who start a business, for example, will think about their legacy much earlier than traditionally. Back, 40, 50 years ago, I think there was much more of a focus on, you'd go to college, people start or not, and start a business, take care of their family. And once everything was squared away and we had the car and the vacation and maybe some funds set up for grandkids' college, well into the business cycle, a decade or decades in, somebody would start thinking about legacy. Well, I have more than I need now. What am I going to do with it, and how am I going to improve my community? And business owners, and even corporate executive people who are successful end up being the pillars of the community because they have extra resources, whether that's time or money, to support things going on in the community. What I'm finding now is that young people think about legacy and think about what impact their business is going to have, their extra is going to have, much sooner in the cycle. And some even start before they've made a dime in profit. They've got either a cause in mind, or they in fact start a nonprofit alongside of the for-profit so that they can enroll themselves and their employees in some bigger vision. And what's really amazing about that is that it improves employee retention. Studies show, Gallup, and we've all read the studies, heard about the studies, that it's not just about the pay increase, it's about the meaning of the job that matters to young people. And so, if we can, studies show if you tie people, your employees, to a cause that's bigger than them and maybe outside of work, it really improves retention because it gives them something good to feel about the job outside of earning a paycheck. And so that's a big reason that a lot of founders start nonprofits very early on. And I think there's just a focus on what kind of impact am I going to have. People make decisions on what products they buy nowadays, whether they have an impact. Are they tested on animals, or is there a positive value that that company is representing that they're buying their services and products from? And I think they think about that. They think about their own business in that way as well.
Yeah, I think that especially with the internet being at the fingertips right now, we just pick up a smartphone. We can research the heck out of companies as well as nonprofits, like you had said. Are they doing what they say they do? Are they really a green company? They
Right.
say that they care about their suppliers, but what is the truth? And people start to dig. Okay, so that is very interesting regarding companies and employees these days. And absolutely, I think people do want more connection. And I also know that you are a deep wealth when it comes to knowledge. For example, if somebody does start a nonprofit, it's more than the piece of papers in front of them. It's how do they hold a board meeting so it's 30 minutes compared to 3 hours, for instance. So I want to shift for a moment, but I want to stay with the problem because I want to address that right now. So, what are some of the misconceptions when either starting or maintaining a nonprofit? And then, how do you overcome these barriers if you're talking to someone that's thinking about this or that's trying to keep it all together?
What I found as a business owner and a nonprofit board member, founder, etc., is there's so much wonderful information. If you want to, if you do a startup, I've been in pitch contests or pitch trainings. How do you get other people enrolled, investors or whomever enrolled in your business? And there's so much great information there on how to increment the complexity of the startup commensurate with where it's at in its scope of activities, how big it is, how many employees that you have. And so there are lots of great mentors and programs and videos and things explaining to people how to increment all of that as you go so that you don't overwhelm yourself on day one. You just do the most important things in the way that they need to be done. And I find that there's not as much great information in the nonprofit world as that. And because this industry until recently has been dominated by attorneys and accountants and people who are kind of professionals paid to see problems
Mm-hmm.
and mitigate problems and limit liability. There's a ton of emphasis on things like conflict of interest, and
Mm.
how you need to have all of your ducks in a row, all your I's dotted, T's crossed. And that's great. And I'm glad that people are paying attention to things like compliance because, we all have to follow the laws and guidelines.
And the devil's in
However,
the details, but
exactly, exactly. But if you, like anything in life, if you tried to plan your baby's life before you have one and try to plan every single thing out and be perfect until they're 18 before the baby is born, boy, you're going to have a really difficult time bringing that child into the world. It's the same with a nonprofit. Keep your board simple, and we help teach people that you should have a small board and they should be very close to you. And in fact, there's a big myth that you can't have family on your board. A lot of people end up not starting the nonprofit or delaying it because there's a lot of misinformation about things like you can't have family on your board. You absolutely can. There is no prohibition on having family on your board. So you can start your board with a very simple structure of three people, you and the founder and two others typically. They can be family, or at least one. Maybe you pick an independent friend for the other. And then as you grow the organization, start raising money, then you want to have more safeguards against abuse or self-dealing, what's called self-dealing, et cetera.
so it's
And
an
you
arm's
can
length
worry about
transaction.
conflict of interest as it grows. But if you put these big barriers in front of yourself before you ever get started, you may never get started. So there are a number of myths that us as a company, and just really, I don't care if you're doing business with Instant Nonprofit or not. I really want people to understand. My mission is for people to understand that this is an option, and how simple can it be so that you can get started and do something at a small scale today and then grow it as you grow your business or as you grow your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I found that interesting. So what else? What else comes up with people? What is on their mind of I don't
Another
know.
big myth that I find that unlocking this one myth and getting this out of the way of people really helps them to move forward confidently. And that's the idea that they can't raise money until they get the IRS approval. Because even though
Mm,
we make it a practice to reduce the approval time by at least two-thirds is what we advertise. I'm not in control of the IRS, and if I was or ever am, you and I are going to have another really interesting podcast episode. I'll just tell everybody how to wipe out their tax bill. But what we do is create all the perfect conditions so that the IRS agent on the other end can check that box approved, get another file off their desk, and punch out to lunch early, which is what every bureaucrat wants to do. So,
mm,
in the process of that, one of the big obstacles that people have when they're making this decision about starting a nonprofit is, do I have to wait to raise money until I get that IRS approval back? And the
mm,
answer is no. The IRS's official policy is actually to backdate tax exempt status to the date of your incorporation.
mm,
So as soon as you can get incorporated and get your EIN, you can go to the bank,
mm.
open the bank account, and start enrolling others in your vision and even give them a receipt so that they can get that tax deduction for donating. And that is the number one reason that people give to a nonprofit. Yes, they want to do good, but boy, they sure like jumping down from a 32% tax bracket to a 28% tax bracket for their entire year's income by giving a small percentage of that income to a nonprofit because it reduces your top line of income, and that can often, just a few $1,000s gift at the end of the year can take your entire, say, $100,000 earned from 32 to 29, for example, and reduce that amount of taxation for you. So that's a huge thing that people, the light bulb comes on and they say, oh, in that case, let's get started right away.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that because I think what you're pointing to is there are those external challenges to overcome, and there's also the internal um, benefits regarding when somebody starts a nonprofit, like more meaning in their life. And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit regarding mindset. I think another challenge, and you brought this up when you first started, you asked yourself the question of, can I do this? Or rather, what am I made of?
Yeah, I think we all have that question. And personal development or self discovery, whether you do it intentionally or sometimes unintentionally, with either maybe a health scare, a relationship ending, or something, and you're sitting. Ultimately, we're alone in this world, and we have to build these connections with others and with our own identity and the world around us. And we have to ask ourselves, what is it that I'm made of? What am I going to do in this life that shows me
Mm-hmm.
the kinds of hills I can climb, and shows me the true values that I'm living, that are sort of beyond paying the bills or doing the thing that's right in front of us. And I have found that a nonprofit is not only a challenge in itself, just like starting a business is really a journey of self discovery, but starting a nonprofit is a really big version of that because we discover in that process it's okay and actually it's great to do well while doing good. You can actually get paid by your nonprofit, for example, or you can have a family member. We start nonprofits for sports figures and people who have high salary jobs, and often they enroll their spouse or a family member in running the nonprofit and vetting these great causes in the community to see which ones are a fit for us. And so it's absolutely fine, and in fact, it's advised that somebody get paid at the nonprofit to administrate it and make sure that it's out there doing the good in the world. So all of these things are, pathways to self-discovery and really understanding what is it that I'm made of, what am I going to volunteer for in this world to improve it and to overcome obstacles? And man, when you see someone's face light up because you helped them through a really tough situation, and now they're all the time, our nonprofit founders get back to us and say, they want us to look at their website and see the testimonials of people who have overcome addiction or
Mm-hmm.
overcome homelessness or whatever. And there's nothing like seeing those smiles on those faces and knowing that I just had a tiny, tiny part in bringing that to life, and it really helps me sleep at night pretty well.
Yeah, one of the things I had shared with you is that oftentimes confidence is one of the key areas that holds person back from designing their legacy, whether they are self made or in a multi generational family of wealth. So I wanted you to speak on that for a moment because it does bring up personal agency. Who am I to design a legacy? Who am I to start a nonprofit? Who am I to take on this topic that um, I think someone else is better suited for? I think about there's a young lady out of North Carolina. She's called foodbabe.com, and she took on corporations like Subway, and she did very well for herself. And she had a background, I think, with Deloitte and Touche, or one of the consulting houses. So she had business training, but she went out there and she became really, really successful. But she was just a mom.
Yeah, what I love about this whole topic is we get to adopt the characteristics of an adult, right? Somebody who's serious, business minded, etc. But it
Mm-hmm.
also allows us to, open up to our inner child a little bit. Kids who are going out on the playground and learning a new game or learning how to ride a bike, they're not sitting there going, I have imposter syndrome, and I need therapy for this. They just kind of do it. They fall down, get up and dust themselves off. But there's that excitement and there's a dopamine rush, right, from learning this new thing and feeling the wind in your face when you learn how to ride a new a bike. And so this is the same. And so if we can just get people past that the fear and past the getting out of their head and going, well, I'm not sure I can do this, just doing it is the key. And that's why a lot of customers who have come to us who are more mission oriented than intentional, right? A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people come to us unintentionally having started a nonprofit. They just haven't put the entity structure around it. They are, in fact, they went on a trip with their church or their, the Rotary Club, and they just found themselves helping someone in a way that they had never done before. And they go, well, I kind of like how this feels. And they end up doing that. And often we have people who do foster animal shelters, for example. And it costs almost no money. And what people do is they volunteer and they find themselves finding a foster home for one dog. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's two dogs. And they're like, well, this is working and this feels good. And boy, I really like these little creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing you know, they have 3 or 4 crates in their garage that were donated. And they're feeding these dogs, putting out Facebook posts. And the next thing you know, they go, well, I can't afford to pay for dog food at this scale. And they call us and they wrap the entity structure around what they're already doing. And that's a really fun way to start just making an impact, because we can all leave our front door and clean up the garbage that's on the beach near us or do whatever it is. And that is, in fact, the same as running a nonprofit. It's just you're putting structure around something, and then you are inviting other people through that structure to either donate, volunteer. Every supermarket donates dog food, but they need you to have that 501c3. And so that's a lot of the urgency that people come to us. If you turn that telescope around and you go the intentional route, people who are doing well in life, or for example, someday this company might outgrow me, and at 70 or 80 years old, who knows, I love what I do. I might want to go do something else. And so if I were to exit from this company, I would wonder how I'm going to take that excess money that's beyond what I need for retirement and for my family and my goals and make a difference. And that's how you can pass that along without paying estate taxes, and also in a way that's really structured. I think there's some things that I have some beliefs about the world that I think are precious, and it would be great to pass those on. And so I will use my nonprofit to do that and have my kids be proud to have their dad's values projected out into the world and do some of the things that we'd like to do.
Yeah, I think it's so cool. And I think you're speaking to something that has happened more and more, I think, in the last decade. People, especially the generations coming up, if they feel like the government isn't doing enough, then they look to the left and the right and they go, well, if no one else is cleaning up the trash on that beach or the plastics, darn it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to pick up the trash on the side of the roadside. And you're right, not
Mm-hmm.
everyone's going to do it, but there are some people that are just frustrated, like, come on, our community's better than this. Our oceans are better than this. And I think that's a part of
Absolutely.
when people are digging through data on their cell phones or their MacBooks or whatever the vehicle is, to understand, like, what is it really that I'm buying with my dollars? And if I can vote with my pocketbook or my wallet, then what is it that I am going to choose to consciously stand for, than just being a drone that goes through another day, week, month, year, as if it's like, yeah, like one of the things we say at legacy planning is what apathy is doing to your legacy is just not right. And I think about what you're sharing right now in putting your roots into the ground and showing as a positive role model to your children, here's what's possible.
Yeah, I believe you had a guest named William Bissett, and he talked about legacy as living design.
Oh, he was so
And
cool. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So when one is, thinking about what to do or how to do it, like I said, people are. Let's just talk about outrage. Like you were just talking about, people read the news and they look to the left and the right.
Mm-hmm.
And you may or may not be talking about politics, but that's a great metaphor because the fact is, no one is going to have walked in your shoes. No one's had your experience. I'm a therapeutic foster dad, and I adopted my daughter out of therapeutic foster care. And if I hadn't done that, I'd never know what that world is like.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, people often run programs based on what they have experience with, and we can design a legacy around that. And it's really important to understand that what you do today can be done on a small scale, and it's just an experiment. And I look at everything in my life as an experiment now. Why? Because experiments don't fail. So
You always
that's a
learn
really
something.
easy way to give yourself permission and kind of move forward into this and just try something. A nonprofit can have any number of charitable causes. You can start it because you think, okay, I am I have a background as a therapist and I love horses, so let me bring equine therapy to foster kids. That may work out, or in the
Mm-hmm.
process of serving that need, you might discover that there are neglected horses that are out there needing a home and are either freezing to death up here in the Northwest, for example, and that actually becomes your mission because you have pity and compassion for
Compassion,
these
empathy.
horses. It's like many businesses. 3M didn't set out to invent a glue that doesn't work, but boy, is everybody appreciative of the Post-it, right? So often our mistakes or our discoveries along the way are what bring us to our greater purpose. It's really important to take action. And boy, if anyone believes that government isn't doing it, and government never will do things, institutions, your church, no one will ever do things in the way that you will do them. And that's because they don't have your experience. You bring a certain perspective, and a lot of organizations that we start fill gaps in between. Foster care is a great example. When these kids turn 18, they're given a garbage bag, not even there's actually nonprofits that give them a suitcase. They're given a garbage bag to put all their life's belongings in. Their services are stopped, just like when somebody goes off welfare. Their services are stopped, and they're left to fend for themselves and get a job and all those things. So we can find ways to bridge people so that just a little bit of effort gets them a long way because the system carried that person until they were 18. And if the support for them just drops off a cliff one day, all of that investment might go to waste. So that's a gap that can be filled. So all of these things are just ways to discover and ways to experiment with what would be something that my family foundation would align with. And then I want to make the distinction that there are two different kinds of foundation or nonprofit that people might want to think about, your listeners might want to think about in particular, that have to do with legacy. Is it all right if I do that?
Yeah, please. And I was just thinking about that garbage bag metaphor. It's almost like the military or summer camp.
Yeah, and it's not a lot of dignity when you have to put your belongings in a garbage bag and then hit the street. But there are two types of nonprofit, and particularly in the foundation or legacy world. One is called an operating foundation, right? And so a foundation is typically, although that word isn't really limited, but it's typically looked at as an organization that's getting most of its money from one place, right? So Instant Nonprofit has a foundation, and it will get most of its money from one place. We'll probably enroll others as well, but that's a single source of funding. Now, we can have the choice of having one of two types of nonprofit. There's the operating foundation where we actually run programs. We get volunteers, we we collect materials, we organize, and we actually have interaction with those that we're helping. That's where you're running programs, and that's called an operating foundation. There's a non operating foundation, which is much more typical when people think of a foundation often, and that's a grant making foundation. It's simply a way to take money and say, we're going to focus on this one area. And that one area might be finding places to give a bridge from welfare to to meaningful work, home, etc. Or finding a bridge where kids coming out of foster care can enroll in our program. And we give money to other organizations that help those kids. They run the programs. They're already doing this. We're just finding there's a need there and filling that with the fuel that comes out of this foundation. And that's a lot less complicated, of course. And there's an application process, and the game there is in setting up. I think of corporate people who are great at setting up systems, and systematizing things like the application process. What type of organizations will qualify? What range of funds would we give? And then you create a grant making program. People apply for those grants, and then the process is qualifying for them, dispersing that money, and then monitoring and making sure they did a good job. And if they did a good job, they can sign up for the next year. And so that's a big distinction in the two types of foundation that people can start.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. So, what differentiates nonprofits that merely get started from those that grow, thrive, and then leave that generational impact?
I would say the biggest difference between a nonprofit that survives and one that maybe stumbles along and doesn't reach the vision of what that founder was intending at the beginning is, as I said, incrementing the complexity as you go, not creating founder burnout by keeping things simple at the beginning, but also getting out in front of things a little bit and keeping it organized. So we have a program, for example, that we teach people how to set up something as simple as a Google folder hierarchy that their staff can understand from day one. Here's where the volunteer lists are. Here's where you can go out and get that animal food for, here are all our go-to resources for the things that we have to do. So there's some structural, organizational things that people can do early on so that they can point, and in 5 minutes, that volunteer can understand how to help them. And so if you do a little bit of that structure at the beginning, it can really create a lot of simplicity later on. Because almost the curse of starting a nonprofit or a business is success. When people start saying, well, I want what you have, or I want to participate, I want to volunteer, I want to give, or you find a big need and there's a lot of, stray dogs in the area, and you find this this vet who can help you get these animals healthy, and they say, give me all you got. I'm a successful vet and I've been meaning to contribute this way. All of a sudden you have a problem. And if you have a little bit of that structure set up at the beginning, you're going to be able to plug people into your process, plug money into your process, and not become overwhelmed. Founder burnout and what's called founder syndrome in the nonprofit world, and it happens in business too, where things are too reliant on one person. It's really important to get out in front of that and just create some simple policies and procedures and systems at the beginning so that you can do what you do best, which is usually tell people about it, get the word out, bring awareness, and lead that vision, and then have other people step into that day-to-day work that keeps the organization going, making the phone calls, saying thank you to people that donate. All that stuff can be handled by volunteers. You should just have a little process for each of those things. As soon as these people come about, have something for people to step into to help you.
What is the stats out of curiosity? Is it like 80-20? Is it 70-30? Is it 50-50? The ones that make it with staying power. Do you know offhand?
I don't have an official stat, and I would say that it's possibly more the scale that they reach or the level of success that they reach versus
Okay.
just kind of going out of business. if you look at statistics, and we kind of all hear this in the startup world, 80 or 90% of businesses don't make it past 5 years. That may be true in the nonprofit space. It may not. And I believe it's okay either way. No one ever says there are too many businesses and we shouldn't ever innovate or start anything. Nobody hopefully says there are too many babies, so we should just stop having them. As a matter of fact, there are people now that say we better have some babies out in the West because our population's declining. But it's the same with nonprofits. There are always going to be wonderful reasons for people to try to innovate, try to improve on what's come in the past, and legacy organizations that have been around for a long time, American Heart Association, or what have you. I'm not picking on them, but they are steeped in processes that were developed 20, 30, 50 years ago. So someone who's starting today isn't encumbered by any of that. And they can hit their email list, set up a website in a day, and start doing work at a much greater level of effectiveness from day one. So
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
great insight.
yeah, I think there's some failure rate, but I don't believe it's ever a failure. And the reason is that I've experienced and I've seen so much spiritual, emotional, and even in areas of professionalism and just skill sets, there is so much growth to be had by answering the call on your life that even if the nonprofit you start doesn't work, or 2 years later you have a big career change and you can no longer manage it, the growth that people go through in that process is irreplaceable.
Mhm.
So I don't ever want, the chance of failure. Just like that shouldn't stop anyone from starting a business. As a matter
Mhm.
of fact, it makes me more determined to know that my company is facing these odds, but that I have something special in mind that can overcome those odds and show the world how much impact you can make with a small organization.
Yeah, I think again, it's a great insight regarding the American Heart Association or any nonprofit that was started a number of decades ago. And you're right, if they have policies and procedures that were written that worked at that time, well, that's great. That worked for that decade. But here we are today, and sometimes asking bigger organizations to change is like, whew, that's yeah. Which brings me to my next question. That kind of has to do with ego. How can founders keep their mission aligned with service rather than personal recognition, especially after their influence grows?
What I have found in the nonprofit space is when it comes to, putting one's own personal advancement, in place versus the mission, I almost have to encourage most nonprofit founders to to look at it the other way around. People are so giving,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to explain to people when fundraising, for example, that individuals give to you, the person who they connected emotionally with because of the story, your origin story, first. Then they give to your mission. So when someone has a brand new nonprofit, say, and they run into that person on the street corner, and a conversation strikes up, right? We've all heard of the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch has to start with you as a person. And that's why when I started this podcast, I said, when I was 8 years old, we discovered that my sister was developmentally disabled, and I got to grow up around these amazing people at Special Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's turned into my unexpected career in starting and running a company to help people who start nonprofits. When people hear that story, they imagine their experiences. They put themselves in your shoes and go, wow, I've had experiences where I've just been so impressed with these people who are doing good things. And that makes it relatable. And so I might follow up with, and now I help thousands of people achieve their passion. We all hear about follow your passion, find your purpose. Well, what do you do once you do follow your passion and find your purpose? You have to put the rubber to the road somehow. So if I start with that story and then I say I help people actualize their passion and purpose in life, and I leave it at that in that first elevator pitch, that one sentence, the next question they have is, boy, that sounds really neat. How do you do that? And then I'm giving information that they've asked for. I'm not pounding them into the ground with a 20-minute treatise on my mission. They want to know about my mission then. And that's a great way to look at it, that it's important to if founders, whether they're very self-promoting or very, okay with being out there and having their name on things, or they want to sit in the background, if either way, the first thing they can do is attach their personal story in a very emotionally um, evocative way to why they're doing what they do, and then follow with the mission, all their conversations are going to go so much better. And then that ego, self, and bigger mission balance is going to be just perfect.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the gentleman that started a company called, or a nonprofit called Charity Water. I remember his videos used to be on YouTube. Oh,
That's a big one. That's a big one. Now, he's looked at as a true innovator. The way that he got people attached to that mission and allowed them to sponsor a specific project to get people water was was brilliant, because like we think about the any large organization, we've mentioned a couple, but American Lung Association, I'm going to say for just for example purposes. That's a big organization. When you give to an organization like that, it feels like you're just feeding money, a little bit of your money, however much it might be. If you gave them $10,000,
mhm.
that would still kind of feel like it's just going into this machine, this nebulous, machine. Whereas at Charity Water, what the founder of that did, and I wish I could remember his name, he had this innovative model of immediately attaching that person's donation to a project on the ground. They would see pictures. They'd know exactly how many kids would be in that village and would be affected. And so it took him out of the picture and connected that person directly with the beneficiaries of that work. But boy, that put him on the map as a real innovator. And it brought I mean, that is like a prime example that is used in the nonprofit sector all the time about how somebody can just have an idea, and by presenting it in the right way and inviting people to participate, it becomes so much bigger. I mean, that thing just took off. It's a juggernaut, and it's made such a difference in people's lives. And it's because of that model he created.
Yeah, and he was like from the nightclub scene. He was a party boy.
Well, we all have to eventually find greater meaning, right?
Yeah. Well, I just thought maybe the social skills of what he learned in terms of networking then got transitioned. But yeah, originally he was just a party guy in New York City, and he was flying all around the world partying it up on boats. And then he woke up one day and yeah. Anyways, yeah, real
No,
life.
it's a great example. But isn't all business, whether it's, opening the velvet rope at a nightclub and letting your friends in, we're all presenting value in this world. And that's nonprofits do the same. We're just not selling a widget. We're not selling a car or a blender or whatever it is that companies sell as products. The product is transformation in somebody's life, a cleaner environment, or animals no longer wandering in your own back alleys in your neighborhood. So it's just about presenting value, and whatever skills someone has, whether they're kind of a closet person who wants to sit there and work on data in the background and not be out front, or the club promoter, we all have a place in this world to bring change, and we can make that part of our legacy. And we can not wait until we have a legacy. I'm not waiting until I'm old to start doing good in the world. I'm going to start doing it now, and I'm going to enroll my kids in doing this as well. That's going to keep us closer in real time today. And then it's going to be very easy for me to really be confident that that money that I leave behind is going to be used properly, because I'm going to have been doing it all throughout my life. It's going to keep me connected to making money in the business at a certain point. What's another roof if you're a roofer? What's another deal if you're a deal maker? So installing legacy while you're doing the thing that you're doing can actually help fuel and keep things alive. And then that next deal actually means I'm going to be able to help 5 more families. It's not just about, okay, we're going to have a bigger, profit margin to get taxed on at the end of the year.
Yeah. So let me take it to the bigger picture for a moment, because we could think to ourselves, kind of like what you shared when you first started out. I think the question you had brought up was, what am I made of? But when we think about like the 100th monkey syndrome, if a bunch of individuals out there say, you know what, I'm made of good character, and I'm going to take on this project that's in front of me, and I'm going to start a nonprofit, and darn it, it's going to become a part of my legacy. Okay, so let me bring on the next question then. So you've helped thousands of people navigate government systems to build change from the ground up. What are your thoughts on the role of nonprofits in shaping culture, policy, and the future?
I love it. And it gets back to that question you had earlier about what do people do when they look around and they see, there's a lot of squabbling. The algorithms are kind of designed to have people at each other's throats, whether it's on Facebook or now we're seeing in the street. And
Mm.
it's my dream that we could take all that energy and channel it into doing good, actually making that difference. If you don't like the way a certain set of people is being treated in society, start a nonprofit to help them. Start a nonprofit to bring them empowerment and help them help themselves. I think of doctors, and I love natural medicine, and I love when I find a practitioner who is actually helping me and my own body heal itself instead of giving me a pill that might mask the symptoms or something. Instead, they're unlocking my own healing because of my body's power to do so. I know that I have somebody I really want to work with in the future. And it's the same with nonprofits and causes. If you see something that you want to change, take that moral outrage, take that anger, that frustration, that even sometimes despondence brings people to inaction. But we can transmute that huge energy that people have, right, that we
Mm.
have inside us, and channel that through a nonprofit. So it actually can lead to, mental health, great change in the world, and deciding to go, you know what, this thing that I'm confronting that just I see in the world, and I'm so frustrated. And we have a fast changing world right now. A lot
Mm.
of people are being dislocated. AI is going to, disrupt a lot of jobs and all kinds of careers and vocations. And young people are even dropping out of Ivy League school, they're saying now, because entire industries are going to be disrupted by AI. Well, what if we can teach them, start a nonprofit to teach people to adopt some of these new technologies and how it can actually make them more useful and not less useful in the job market. Any problem you can think of that would cause you frustration or cause you to, feel helpless or feel like the world's spinning out of control can be a great basis to go out and just explore, can I help solve this need? And, that's where you can turn it around and take that great energy and make great use of it.
Yeah. One of the things I mentioned to you in our last conversation was that there was another podcast guest, Jan Petke, out of Germany, and he spoke about how there are what he calls tribes coming up and individuals that are affluent, and they're looking around and they're saying to themselves, well, if the government's not leading in this area, then how can I bring together other individuals that have means and resources and talents and shared values and interests? Then therefore these tribes are now stepping up. That's an informal term regarding tribes, but it's all over the world of people that have means and again an interest, an intellectual curiosity to want to step up. And so when you bring up even what you're offering in terms of an instant nonprofit of let's just take care of your paperwork so you can get out there and hit the ground running, that is going to shape the future. And then I have to believe that then in terms of policymakers, if they're going to look over and go, gosh, we need to step it up because our people as the fourth branch of government is outshining us.
Well, the majority of government work is done through nonprofits, and I love. You make me think of, Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis.
Okay.
People like this who have a following or lots of money, right? Pierre
Mm-hmm.
Diamandis has the X Prize, I believe, and a number of other initiatives. And they are out there encouraging people who are at their very expensive seminars or in their masterminds how they can go out and build a tribe and take that to tackle a really big problem in the world. I know a gentleman in Denver here, and he has an organization. He's a venture capitalist. They have an organization that lists the top 10 problems society is facing, and they have committees and projects to try to solve each of those. And, they're actually looking at the stack of challenges society is facing, and they're trying to solve the biggest ones, not just the local one or the one they have experience with. And that's attracting huge tribes. And you don't even need a huge tribe because whatever it is that you decide to do, the internet gives us the ability to connect with the few people percentage wise that are going to relate to that problem or go, you know what, I'm glad somebody's doing something about this. Let me join them. And so you can build a powerful tribe out of almost anything. And you don't need, if you look at history, big movements were started by groups of less than 150 people.
Mm.
And whether it's, your favorite religion and its spread started with a small group. Major major reforms in society started with one person who had a small group of believers who said, "Yes, I want to bring civil rights to people. I want to bring voting, or I want to stop the genocide." And it's always started by a person who says, "You know what, I've had enough," and immediately just a handful of people come around them. They have their tribe, and that commitment and that energy creates something in the universe that just cannot be extinguished, and it goes worldwide. And that's what's so exciting about this is nothing's ever this spontaneous mass movement. Nothing is an overnight success. Everything has to gestate in the mind of one person at the beginning, and from there, anything can happen.
Yeah, I think some people probably say to themselves, who have the leadership ability, come on now, humanity's better than this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so let me transfer it over to the legacy portion for a moment. Um, but before I do, I just want to go back to mindset for a moment. For someone who's listening right now who wants to do something meaningful but feels overwhelmed, what's the first step you'd recommend for them to start designing this legacy through a nonprofit, or their legacy through a nonprofit as one of the vehicles of their legacy?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. If someone has even an inkling of or a question, is a nonprofit right for me? And you know, our job at Instant Nonprofit is we have a done for you end to end process that handles all of the paperwork, all of the little policies and things that need to go along with it. And it's a completely done for you process, 200% IRS approval guarantee. You get double your money back if we fail. Of course, we've never had to pay that because this is all we do. And so to understand if you're ready to take that step, or what's needed, what would I need if I thought maybe this was something for me to go for, we've got a great gift for your audience. If somebody goes to instantnonprofit.com/podcast, we have a boot camp and we have a startup kit. And basically, those tell people exactly what are the few things that you need before you get started, right? A name, a mission, an address, and that's often your own kitchen table. Just some very simple things. And then what are the things they need to think about in order to coalesce this idea from, an idea into something that's real? And it's always easier to enroll other people in something that's real, right? An entity, a nonprofit that's created. It's much easier to get people to support that than floating an idea past your friends. But people need to understand, am I ready? What does
Mm-hmm.
it take to be ready? And, what are the costs? What am I signing up for? And so we're not here to push anybody into anything. We want people to understand that this is an entity type. It's a business, it's a type of business, type of corporation that has tax exempt status. And that simply means, like I said earlier, donors can get tax deductions for their donations. And also that entity, that corporation, is not taxed on what would normally be considered profits. If you have $500,000 in expenses and you bring in $1 million, you don't get taxed at the end of the year on that other 500,000. That can roll over tax free. So we help people. If they go to instantnonprofit.com/podcast, they'll get a free gift. They can have a call with us and just walk through, how does this fit into your legacy plan? How does this fit into your Roth, your 401, all of these tools that people have? This is simply another tool so that they can do well by doing good, or while doing good, by installing a 501c3 into their life's work and into this portfolio of tools that they have to bring about legacy. And if it's something that they're not ready for now, at least they'll be armed and equipped with an understanding of, when might this be right for me? What can I do with this? And what if everything goes wrong? How do I back out of this, right? Because people do want to know, if they make a commitment, how far in are they? And so we can handle all of that stuff and just provide that information. And that's really what we're here for, is to just help people come to a decision, understand what this option brings, and how they can explode their legacy, really bring their legacy a whole new, breathe life into it through a nonprofit.
Yeah, I think preparation meets opportunity, and knowledge always helps. Like you had said, sometimes somebody hears something and it'll gestate in their mind, and then when they're ready, they come out of their shell and they go, today's
That's
the day.
right.
I'm going to take action.
Sometimes people, give us a shout, or I'll run into an old friend on the street, and uh, they talked to me 10 years ago about this, 5 years ago, and they go, you know what? It's time. We know when it's time. And so if we can gather this information, it's like going back to school. People think about going back for their master's or a PhD or whatever, and then life gets busy and everything, but then later they find a whole bunch of forces align and it's the right time to step through that portal. And this is a portal as well. And knowing what the options are helps us to know when that door is ready to be opened.
Very cool. Okay, so let's transition over to the personal legacy bit for a moment. What does this word legacy mean to you personally?
Personally, it means that even those things I've deferred, right? That I'm busy. I have a family. I have a business. I have all these things. I have a little part of my notebook of my journal where I write down things that I just can't do right now, but are my some days.
Yeah.
And we all have that little list of some days. And what I'm going to be able to do is dust that off and expand. Yes, I'm out serving today. I'll walk out of this office door later and do something to create some change in the world. Or our staff will vote on the next nonprofit that our foundation wants to support. Boy, they love animals, so it'll probably be another foster dog project. But those things that you can't do right now, but that you're saving up in the back of your mind, to me, that's what legacy means is, I'm working hard every day to earn the ability and pile up the time and the space and hopefully the funding as well to do some of those things that are on my someday list, my sort of personal passion bucket list.
Yeah, so it sounds like to me that legacy then personally for you is how well you live your life now.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
I would say
And in the
some
potential of
some of my legacy is I love the outdoors. I love to dirt bike and do all these things out in the West, go rafting, mountain biking, etc. And there are a lot of people who never get to see any of that, right? They are in the inner city, or they grow up, and never leave their neighborhood, don't have the means. And so I love to bring people to these wild places and just see the look on someone's face when they first see those amazing monuments out in Utah and Moab or places like that. And I would love someday, that's not something I've been able to do someday, to bring kids who have never had the opportunity to experience the Wild West and the wild outdoors to do that, just so that they know, again, this is an option for me and I've got something to go for in the future.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, in one sentence, what would you like your holistic legacy to be?
I would like my holistic legacy to be ultimately to have helped unlock tens of thousands of people's vision for what their legacy could be, how much bigger a life they can have through whether it's a nonprofit or anything else, just introducing to people that getting started on doing something meaningful today can never be taken away from you. If I walk outside today and I help one person or clear the trash on my street and beautify it, that can't be taken away. Whatever happens tomorrow, with my health or, unexpected things in life, the things that we do today that we did without being forced to do it or without getting anything back for it
Mm.
are those things that when we're, lying on our deathbed or when we've looked back on our life, those things are going to be, they're permanent, and we've literally changed the trajectory of the world in some way that can't be taken away. And that's what I want my legacy to be, is to have helped unlock that idea and unlock that actual experience for people at scale. And that's why I started this company. It's why I do what I do every day, and it's why I volunteer for the things I do.
Okay, so before you share the website of your company, if you were to think of the three or four legs of a chair as being the pillars to your legacy vision, what would you state or share as your top three or four core values?
I would say experience. Get out there and actually do something that you can feel. Um, I'm a big idea guy, and I could sit here and iterate in my office all day long, but that's different than getting out there and experiencing things. And in this virtual world we live in, get the wind in your face, get the dirt on your hands, and go do something. So that's number one. Number two is take the energy that I was talking about of either outrage or excitement or whatever it is that you see that you'd like to see different. Do not accept it. Do
Mm-hmm.
not just go away and say, well, there's nothing anyone can do. The forces are against that. Take that energy that you have and direct it towards something, toward changing something. And it's amazing how much power we have when we can transmute that. Number three is pretend you're going to live forever. And that's where you get to pile up those things that you'd like to do someday, because those things can keep you going when, when things look bleak or when you get tired or whatever. It's important to have some things that you haven't accomplished yet that you'd really like to, and make sure they're in a place where you can revisit them. And then the fourth one is explore. Even things that you think you might not be interested in, go explore them. Whether that's finding out more about starting a nonprofit or doing something, you don't like water, go try rafting. You don't like dealing with, small children, try volunteering at, a camp. Because what's really funny is those shadow places, those things that we think we want to avoid, are actually the doorways and portals to our greatest growth and our greatest self-discovery. So I actually use that as a gauge on what to lean into.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you. I
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you share your company's website, and then I'm going to loop back to what we started with. So what's a good website for a listener or a viewer to learn more about your organization and yourself?
Especially if they're just learning, just hearing about this, don't know us from anyone, and especially in the legacy space, in the space where you serve, they would just go to instantnonprofit.com/podcast, and they can get a free gift. We're not going to blow anyone up. There's no agenda other than to provide people the information that they want, and so we have a great free gift there, and we just walk people through all of the different things that they might want to know about this option. And that would be where I would send people to instantnonprofit.com/podcast.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I know that I asked you to mention it a couple of times, but sometimes I circle the wagons with the listeners because they need to hear it more than once, because especially if it's a new idea, it's got to enter their brain and they go, okay, this is safe, etc. Okay, well, let me circle back to where we started at the very beginning, which was the intention of how can a nonprofit assist your legacy planning, bridging the present to the future. And I think we have fulfilled that business promise. Some of the great key points that you have spoken about in the last hour or so had to do with understanding conflicts of interest and compliance and getting through that paperwork and the legal aspects, and then realizing that you can raise money even before there's an IRS approval. And understanding the tax bracket. I mean, the devil's oftentimes in the details, but also that there are hills that you can climb. And whether you're working with sports figures or high income individuals that would like to contribute, that they too can be mission oriented around other areas of their life, not just the work or their paycheck. And also that there's you spoke about two types of nonprofits. So I think that we have definitely fulfilled the business promise started out at the very beginning. So thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you so much. This is just a vehicle. No one ever needs to be a mechanic to drive a car. And this could be a vehicle for you. So you don't want to have to learn how to fix a car, or you don't want to have to learn something you're only going to do once, like nonprofit paperwork, in order to do something universal like serve your mission. So that's why I encourage people to learn. Try it out, and then get the help you need so that you can do the one thing that only you can bring, that special DNA of your experience, your moral outrage or your passion, and your time and money, and do something special with it in this vehicle. And that's how that works.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much.
Christian, for being a
It was
guest.
wonderful to be here. Have a great day, Angelina.
Okay, so in closing, I'm Angelina Carlton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, USA, but international in those I get to coach and consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moot or moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you hear this episode, please remember to like, subscribe, review, share with your family and friends. And if you feel so inclined, send an email to either Christian or myself and let us know your thoughts and feelings about today's conversation. So thank you so much for joining. And thank you, Christian, for speaking into your legacy.
Thank you.